We're here today with Chris, esports head coach in Kobe International University. Chris, thank you so much for your time, and for sure this is going to be like a valuable talk for international students wanting to know more about the experience in the US with esports and also in your esports program.
Excellent. Thank you for having me, Yvonne. I'm excited to share with you guys what CIU is doing in the realm of esports. We are going into year 3, and I'm most excited about that. This is my first year as head coach for CIU Esports, and we are competing in Rocket League, Overwatch 2, and Smash Brothers Ultimate.
Yeah, and tell us a bit about you, like your journey into being a head coach of esports. Like, how do you get there?
Sure. I think everyone's story is different. So, what's important to know about me is that I was not a former esports competitor. And so, while I have hundreds of hours and many of these games alongside of these students, I am not as ranked as your average collegiate or pro, obviously, esports competitors. And I know that about myself. So, as esports head coach for CIU, I am tasked with resourcing these players to be successful. To that end, I bring in a lot of outside coaches for Rocket League, Overwatch, and Smash, and to help them work with the students in their titles regarding game sense and one anotherness. Now, my background is as an educator and an entertainer. So I have been a professional working musician for a long time, and I have been a college professor for several years as well. My topic has been teams, so working on teams, and that transposes well to the athletic environment because I have learned to teach people to work alongside of one another, and we build a program around that. And in our program, we work around a team charter that really encompasses 4 C's, and that is candor, courage, care, and competition. And in CIU Esports, we work around all of those things to get along better with one another and to exceed in our craft.
That's great, and especially like empowering students. Like, what have your students achieved in those 3 years? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. So we have had, so we have the opportunity to play in NACE Star League, which allows us to play in both fall and spring semesters. So we can technically have 2 seasons a year, is what it feels like, although it's all one rule book. But it is 2 separate brackets for the purposes of playoffs. And we have had multiple undefeated semesters in Rocket League. And in this last year, our Overwatch 2 team didn't lose a single map. And so we have high talent there. And this is all self directed talent. These students, I do all of their scheduling for them. I give them the arena in which to play, I organize space for them to come alongside of one another. As a Christian school, we pause for moments to pray and reflect on things that went well, and we do VOD reviews at the end of all of our matches so that we can stay sharp.
That's great. And when you're having the meeting with the students, like what are the soft skills or like the things you're looking for, that is like, okay, this student will fit in my philosophy, in my esports program with the other students.
Yes, so I'm always careful to acknowledge that to be a competitive esports player, there is more than skill on the table. You have to learn to communicate with your team. You have to have good comms. You have to know that when this headset is on, it doesn't matter if you're sitting in your bedroom alone playing for the team. If this headset is on, you are in the room with your team. So you are acknowledging one another. You have the courage to speak up if a player is not reflecting good game sense, or if a player is off in Narnia, or they are just not participating well with the team if they've missed rotations. And you have to have the courage to speak up. As I mentioned earlier, you have to have the candor to say exactly what needs to be said. So we're not trying to protect anyone's feelings here. And these are principles that we teach in our team at CIU Esports to ensure that we are heard. We want to make sure that we don't only have the courage to speak into one another's ability to play, but that we have the candor to say what needs to be said in a kind way so that it can be heard and reflected upon for the purposes of improvement. And when I'm looking at esports players to join my team, I want to ensure that, yes, they bring skill to the table. That's what got my attention. But if you're going to join our team, you have to be willing to change and to hear input from other players and some of them may be a lower rank than you, and you have to be prepared to be humbled and to listen to input from other players and coaches who are different than you.
That's great. Yeah. And when balancing like academics and esports, like how do you make sure or how do you support the students so they have a schedule that they don't feel like overloaded, you know?
That's a great question. So we we do have access to the students' grades, and we do hold them accountable to a minimum GPA threshold. And we have some mechanics in place that alert us as coaches if someone is struggling in a class. Uh, all of my first semester players must meet with me every week in a study hall, and its only purpose, that study hall, is safe space to study and to do homework and to catch up. I'm not looking over their shoulder, and sometimes I'll bring them snacks and drinks just so it's comfortable and it's sort of fun. But I create space for my first semester students to create good study habits so that they stay eligible to play at the university. In the event that they are struggling in a course or they haven't budgeted their time well, or if they had to miss some classes due to illness or something and their grades have fallen behind, we have structures here at the university that allows them to catch up. And there's a grace period there. They have a certain amount of time in which they need to catch up. And coaches get to walk alongside of players to ensure that they stay successful.
Okay, so if when they have a competition and in that same day they have an exam or presentation that is very important, uh, how would that be managed between the program and the professors?
Great question. Fortunately, esports has a lot of flexibility in rescheduling, especially in the NACE conference. So, if for any reason my players have an academic commitment and they have a presentation, and this happened just last semester where one of my players had to give a speech during game time. He was both a player and my live streamer. And so we were really sort of in a pickle. I had the freedom to reach out to the other team to reschedule the game for the following day to ensure that the student was able to do his presentation.
Okay, and you mentioned like he was also a live streamer. Like, what are student positions that you have available in the program, like for students to develop also not only their competitive skills but other skills for after graduation, if that is what they want to pursue?
Sure. So for our esports team, our roster is pretty small. We average about 15 to 20 students on our team among all the titles. So that Overwatch and Smash. We have a student worker who does our graphic design and is in charge of our streaming. And so he's both a player and in charge of those things. So when he is playing or he has a match, it is his responsibility to ensure that the live stream operator is covered. And we have some other players who are skilled in that, and we bring them in to help with that. But additionally, we have a graduate assistant who helps us schedule, practice, and do VOD reviews for some of the other titles. He is a student, he's a graduate student, and he's a player on the Overwatch team. And he plays a big part in helping us stay organized. And that is, of course, a paid position as well.
Okay, great. And are some of your students interested, like in working in the esports sector, not being like a pro player, maybe, but like working in the esports sector, or are most of your students like just looking to graduate in their degree and then go to the workforce? What is the ratio there?
About half and half. I'm glad you asked for a ratio because I have half of my students who are looking at starting their own businesses or going into nursing. And then I have half of my students who look to be as private contracted coaches or who are looking to be a director or a coach of their own program in the future as well.
That's right. And how would you help like a student that wants to go into the have an internship or job opportunity in the sports sector? How can you like be a support to them or like help them in some way?
Great. Well, there's a lot of opportunities made available to the industry. And so, esports, I've learned just in my first year of the program is highly networked because so much is available online. Players are often sharing with a lot of players on my team are getting additional coaching outside of me. So they are meeting with one-on-one experts and pros who are teaching them higher game sense, who are reviewing their individual gameplay during the summer and after hours. And they have learned through their connections with these private coaches on how to find other opportunities for them to coach up and coming players as well. And I have one or two players on the team who have started earning part time revenue in light of that and are working as part time coaches for other programs across the nation just by virtue of being networked into the industry.
Yeah, and also with this esports programs and universities, this growth, year by year for sure. Like many students may have like coaching positions
Right.
available for when they graduate. Nice.
Yep.
And for your graduate assistant positions, you may be looking or not for more, but like, what are the conditions? Like, how many hours a week does a graduate assistant have to work in order, and also like usually like how many hours of class and studying that, because they also might have
Right.
like a tight schedule.
Well, they'll have to be a full-time student, and so that's an important thing. And that's typically true of any international student that comes over. They have to keep the full-time schedule. For my graduate assistant, they are required to be a full-time student as well, which typically means 3 classes a semester at the graduate level. And they are required to put in between 20 and 25 hours a week for me and the team. Now, I get to define what that means for the students. And so I meet with my graduate assistant once a week to lay out their work. They help me recruit for the title in which they serve. In this case, it's Overwatch. So they help me recruit, they help me schedule, they also help me find tournaments, and they help me as head coach to reach out to individual players who may need additional mentoring or just encouragement, because we had a lot of freshmen start this last year and a couple of them were slow to acclimate to the schedule and needed some encouragement and needed some follow up to ensure that they stayed successful. And I'm proud to say that they were successful. And my graduate assistant played a big part in that, bringing them to my attention, helping identify what needed to be met for them, and it equipped me to reach out to them. And so our graduate our graduate assistant for the CIU esports program has really come in clutch for me these first several months.
Great, great. And this is more like a parent question. Like, how do you make students like stay in the ground? Like, how do you make students be like, okay, academics come first, and then it's esports? Because usually,
Well,
they get in
yeah.
the.
The short answer is if they don't have good grades, then they can't play. I won't take away their
Okay.
scholarship right away, but the rules are is that if you don't have at least a 2.0, you have to sit out of some games. And depending on what team you're on, if you we may not have enough to play in the conference, and we may have to forfeit if you have to sit out because your grades are low. Now, fortunately, that hasn't had to happen yet. Like I said, we have a lot of things in place that alert coaches and faculty if students' grades start to dip. And we have some mechanics in place that helps fortify them to recover quickly if they get behind on anything.
That's great. That's great. And going back to the tight schedule, both in academics and esports that a student may have, do you have like a psychology department or some counselors or like a sports psychologist that is for every sports on campus for students to go to when they feel overwhelmed, or they need to talk to someone?
Yes, I'm really glad that you asked that. So we do have counseling services on campus for. It's not just for esports; it is for all of our students, and so it's not designated by athletic or even academic program. We have counseling services for free on campus for our students. If they are dealing with stress, if they are dealing with any trauma or tragedy in their families or in their personal lives, there is space made for them to come and share, to get some of the attention and care that they need to help overcome and adjust to those things. And that is true for all of our students, no matter where they come from, what they're studying, or what program they play sports in.
That's great. Like I remember when I was an international student, I had a family strategy, and like the counselors from the university really helped because I was like overseas, So that it is really comforting for like students basically, and more in the like more focusing on international students. So I know it's mainly their jobs to do it, but like how do you, but also how do you facilitate or make the transition for those international freshman students to adapt, to CIU, like, so
Yeah.
it's not a huge like, impact.
Yes. So our international students, as soon as they start the admissions process, we walk with them hand in hand through the entirety of that process, not just the CIU stuff like the application and transcripts. We obviously have to get their transcripts evaluated by like INCRED or West. And INCRED is the one that we use the most. It's cheaper for our international
Mhm.
students. So we do rely on that one. And once we walk them through that, we start talking about verifying, certifying funds, and we start talking about getting their visas issued, and then their consulate visit at the embassy, and everything they need to do to prepare. We talk to them about all of that. We have all of our DSOs right here on campus who help prescribe the I-20s and send those away. We send an electronic copy and we send one via DHL to those students, and we send them a copy. We notify them through email and phone call. Once they get here, we try to pick them up from the airport ourselves so that we can bring them straight to campus where they'll be moving in. Sometimes the international student has a family member who is in the States, so they'll take care of that sometimes. But in many cases, we'll pick them up from the airport, either the coach or the admissions team, and we help them move in. Their first week before classes begins, we have international student orientation where we show them everything that they need to be mindful of in terms of resources. This is where you go to eat. This is where you go for tutoring if you need help with courses. This is where you go if something's wrong in your dorm room. This is where you go for chapel and class. And this is where you go if you want to get your driver's license while you're in the United States for the next 4 years. This is what you can do. And then, of course, we orient them to some cultural things that may be lost on them, depending on where they're coming from. If we have Western international students like our Mexican friends or our Canadian friends, there's typically not a lot to teach there. But sometimes we have friends coming from North and Western Africa who may need to be oriented to certain foods and diets that's going to be normal here in the US that may be upsetting at first if they're not used to it. So we make some time to orient them, not just to CIU, but to small pieces of US culture so that they can start to feel at home as soon as possible.
That's great. That's great. And going on to the esports again, like, get us pumped about the infrastructure. Like, what are the facilities for the students?
Great. So we have an official arena right here on campus. It has 10 custom-built PCs in it, and we have a designated console cabinet and monitor for our Smash players. It's all in the same room. Within the context of this room, it is dark. We keep it dark. We keep it cool. It has windows all around that we can open for some natural lighting. But typically, when the sun goes down, we turn on our LEDs, we crank the air down and keep it nice and cool. We typically keep a pot of coffee going in the corner, and we have a mini fridge stocked with water. And so our guys have everything they need from the start of practicing to the end of their match and the VOD review to get everything that they need while they are in the arena. Now, we also have furniture in there for our meetings. Once a week, we'll have meetings in there where we will circle up and sort of discuss infrastructure things. Like we have a tournament coming up, here's what you need to pack. Or financial aid and registration wants you to fill out this form. Don't forget it. Here's how I can help you do that. And so our arena has space for all of that. Specifically, we have fiber optics coming into the universities. We have fiber cable internet, which keeps our ping really, really low and our signal very, very consistent. And in the evening after 5 p.m., bandwidth is redirected from staff offices like mine. I'm in a staff office right now. It's redirected from staff offices and directed towards the dorms and the esport arena so that we get the best up and down speeds on campus.
That is great.
It's a big
I've never
deal.
heard it before from an esport coach.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. And you mentioned like students to pack their things. Like, how many LAN events a year do you take your students?
So at least one, depending on budget and how far away it is, I can sometimes squeeze into. So Rocket League gets guaranteed one, Overwatch gets guaranteed one. Smash actually gets to go to a lot because we have several Smash tournaments local to where we live, and they're actually very, very affordable. Whereas your PC lands are typically more expensive, and the ones we look at are typically out of state or a 10-hour drive away. So we have to stay in
Okay.
hotels. So the guarantee is one. It's always my hope to squeeze in a second one depending on the time and budget.
That's great. That's great. Well, Chris, I think you have answered all the questions that I had in mind that international students and families ask. Um, where can people find you and the program?
Excellent. So you can find more information about CIU Esports program on our website, www.ciu.edu. Everything you need to know about our academics and our athletics can be found there, as well as my contact information. And I'll be glad to talk to any students who have questions.
Thanks, Chris, for your time, and we'll stay in touch.
All right. Thank you so much, Ivan.